Welcome back to the Academy of Higher Learning. This is Introduction to C tutorial number 2. In this tutorial there is quite a few things I want to talk about, which you can see over here, but I don't think I'll have time to get through all of them, so if it does take too long, I'll end up splitting them into 2 or 3, however many it takes videos. Okay, so let's hop right into it. The first thing I want to talk to you about is commenting. So in C there are two types of comments. There's multi-line comments and there's single-line comments. And if you notice right above here, this is a multi-line comment, which starts with this and ends with this. One thing to note is that I made all my comments red just because they're easier for you guys to view. So the other type of, or actually I'll just show you this type of comment, which is known as the multi-line, Okay, well we're getting a suggestion for that. Let's just comment and /. So that's the multi-line comment. Essentially it just spans over several lines. The other comment type is /, and this works either after a piece of code on a line, or independently by itself, but it only works on that one line. So comment here. And to give you an example, let's say we have our main function, right? We can put a comment right here with the /, but we cannot use the multi-line for this. Okay, so that's commenting, I guess. Let's go into variables. One thing I want to tell you is it's not advisable to use an underscore at the beginning of your variable name. For example, if you do something like this, chances are it will work, but at some point there are functions that would treat this underscore differently than this variable, which is why it's just better to stick with non-underscores at the beginning. You can put them in the middle like this if you want, but just not at the beginning. Okay, so this variable right here, there's 3 parts to it. This is, I guess, well, it says that it's constant, which means that regardless of what we try and do to this variable, this value won't change. This int is the type of the variable, which we always need to declare, and in this case it's an integer. And this is the variable name, which is varnum, or var_num, and this is the value right here. We can also have variables like this. I'll just make it 20. And the difference is this is a value we can change because this variable is mutable, unlike this one, which is immutable. So for example, if we were to do varnum2 is equal to n2 plus 20, this would turn into 40. But if we were to try that with this, it wouldn't change. Okay, so that's actually one more thing about variables is you should always initialize them, which is basically just giving them a value. So when you declare it, it should have a value. Okay, the next thing is function definitions. So normally you have your main function, which is int main void, and your brackets. And what this function does is it's the one function that is actually ran when the program is actually started. And it looks through this, and this is essentially the code inside here. Anything inside here will be run first. So that's why it's essentially the main function. But let's just write another one for ourselves, because we will need to write functions. And let's write a function to square a number. Let's also write a function to add a number, or to add 2 numbers. So for this one, let's call it, first of all we have to do the variable type, which is an int, and then let's call the function square fn, and we have our variable, which is also of type int, and open parentheses. What we should do is return, because we want to return this value to the previous function, or whatever is calling it. Return is kind of like the output. And that's essentially our entire function right there. Because what it does is it runs, you give it the x value, it multiplies it by itself, and provides it back. So to write a function to add two numbers, int add underscore function, that's what we'll call it. And we'll have int a and int b. And what we'll do is we'll just return a plus b. Now if we want to change subtraction, it's fairly similar. You just change this minus, depending on if you want it to be a minus b or b minus a. Or you could use an if statement to determine that later on. Okay, so that is function definitions. Next, let's go to arithmetic expressions. So let's say we have constant 6, right? We could declare this as 2 plus 4. And that's how we could set its value, by doing simple addition. Similarly, we could, for 10, we could do 30 minus 2 times 10. And the reason it does it in, well, I guess C follows the order of operations, so it does 2 times 10 first, and then 30 minus 2 times 10. And similarly, or actually something with the division. Let's do 10 minus something over 9. Let's go 135. Okay. 10 minus 135 over 9, and that's negative 5. So, yeah, that's just the division operator. And one thing to note about the division operator is it always rounds down. So, for example, if you have constant 7 is equal to 79 divided by 10, which would give you 7.9, C will round it down to 7, regardless if it's 7.9, 7.8, 7.2. Regardless of the value, will always round down. The last thing regarding arithmetic expressions is the remainder one, which is, it's fairly straightforward, constant remainder, and what it does is it's the percentage sign. So if you were to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and find the remainder when dividing by 10, this would return 4, because, well, 1,230 is divisible by 10. Okay, so that is arithmetic expressions. Okay, and now let's just bring this right up here. Let's talk about booleans. So, well, as we all know, there's two types of values. It's true, or it's false. And let's just delete all this. So, the equality operator in C is actually two equal signs instead of the single one. So for example, if you have 3 is equal to 3, this would produce true. If you had 3 is equal to 2, this would obviously produce false. So it's lowercase. If you had 3 is greater than 2, we would get true. And if we had 2 is less than 2, we would get false. There's also, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and there's a not operator, which is, or not equal to, which is exclamation mark and equal sign. For the and, or, and not operators, to do an and operator would be, for example, so 3 is equal to 3, and 3 is equal to 2. So what this would produce is false, because and requires both to be true, for it to be true. And since one is false, it'll return false. And this one's false, by the way. I guess or would be same thing. Let's just copy it over. Whoops. But let's change this to 2 straight lines. And this would return true because this one is true. It doesn't matter what this is now. And the last is not. So if we were to do and if we just do this, this would be false because this part's true, but this exclamation mark here negates it, so it goes back to false. Okay, it looks like we're out of time for this video. I'll continue on the next video with, I guess, printing all the way down to the assert function.